Welcome to STAA Live. I'm Brendan Gulick, and we've got a really special guest here this afternoon, Mike Freedman, the executive producer at VISTA WorldLink down in Fort Lauderdale, one of the nation's most forefront remote broadcast facilities, and certainly a company that has grown quite a bit here over the last couple of years. We often bring you different talent to kind of share some different play-by-play and analyst-driven commentary. But I think today we've got a really good idea to maybe pull back the curtain a little bit and explain why this remote broadcast model has been around a lot longer than just during the pandemic, and why it's very much a part of the future. Mike, thanks for taking some time to join us here and answer some questions. Look forward to a good conversation.
You got it. Thanks for having me. I think we both much rather be playing golf than having this conversation, but no, it's good to join you in this setting.
It's good to see you again. Let's why don't we just start with maybe an overview of VISTA. This is a company that maybe not too many people are familiar with because it's still growing, and yet it's been growing at a rapid pace. Give people an idea of the history of VISTA and sort of where you've come here over the last several years.
Sure. So the broad overview, VISTA was started over 30 years ago as a family business, more of a transmission business, getting signals from point A to point B. And it kind of evolved, as everything has with technology and production, into more of a production and REMI facility. So I joined VISTA about 5 years ago, and to kind of help oversee all of the REMI productions across all of their various clients. And then most recently, earlier this year, we were acquired by NEP. So another great thing involved with everything that we do is having NEP behind us and their resources and their firepower, and just continuing to evolve with the technology and the times, if you will.
I'm imagining that many in our audience have never been in a facility like VISTA's, and you probably have this concept of what it might look like, but it's hard to put a finger on it until you actually see it in person. For folks that have never been in a facility like this before, give us an idea of what they could expect if they walk into a facility that is literally built to handle dozens of live productions at a time.
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to describe it is think of a classroom, or a school hallway, if you will, where there's multiple classrooms. Each side of the hallway has 5 or 6 classrooms, and think of it as the classroom at VISTA is the control room, and the control room is essentially replacing the truck. So if you walk down the hallway, specifically at VISTA, we have control rooms on the right and announce booths on the left.
So the idea of a control room replacing a truck, I guess I personally know because I've been there and I've seen it, but you'd be talking about a pretty small truck, right? I mean, it's, typically when I think about what a truck would look like for a network TV broadcast, you think of like a semi truck, right? A lot of space, a lot of equipment. How do you pack such a big production into such a small space and make it look like any other game on TV?
Yeah, I think it's a credit to our staff at VISTA, who, we pride ourselves on wearing multiple hats. So I think in your traditional setting with a traditional truck is 53 feet. So you have one position, one person handling all of that. In our setting, depending on the type of production that we're doing, multiple positions are filled by one person. So combining that with the technology that we have, that's how we're able to get all of that into a smaller space.
I think the biggest question that people immediately think of when they hear the idea of literally producing and calling a game offsite are the logistics around, well, how in the world is that possible? So why don't we start with the 10,000-foot view of, how do you do a game when you're not physically at the game?
Yeah, I think, from the talent perspective, it is the key to it, right? The production side, to me, it doesn't matter if you're in a truck outside the stadium or you're in a control room 1,500 miles away from the stadium. You're still not actually in the stadium, whether you're right outside of it or not. So that part of it is the same. you have all of your monitors where you see your feeds. Everybody there is communicating and doing their normal role wherever they may be. So that takes care of that side of it. From the talent perspective, that's the adjustment. So at Vista, we have multiple monitors in the announce booth. Typically, it's a bigger monitor has the program feed, which is what you see at home. And then the smaller monitor in the booth is typically a quad split, and that can be arranged any way the play-by-play analysts want. Some people just want to see cameras. Some may want to see a graphics channel. Some may want to see replays before they air. So that just depends on the style and who's calling the game. And obviously, we try to pump the gnats and the crowd noise as much as we can in your headsets to make it feel like you're there. It's never going to feel exactly like you're there, but we try to get it as close as we can.
I have to imagine that, part of what drew a lot of this work to Vista is the fact that you've got maybe some smaller budget operations that have slightly bigger goals than maybe they think they can achieve financially on their own, right? If you're a USL championship, level team, you don't have necessarily the budget or the media deal that a Major League Soccer team might have. And perhaps I should preface that the majority of the work that you guys have done is both domestic and international soccer, although there are other sports done out of Vista. But the idea for, a really high quality product to come and look like normal television, quote unquote, for the, the user end, without having to pay for a truck and power and have all of that stuff centralized, hiring a local camera crew, and then basically having everybody else in one facility. How quickly did that idea start to catch on where, your perspective of, hey, this could be something that sticks around for quite a while?
Yeah, I think early on. I mean, I think even as we've seen with the pandemic, forget announcers calling games off monitors. They're calling it from their houses, right? So right. I think at the end of the day, people just want the game. They want the content. And if you can deliver that to them the way they're used to seeing it, I don't think they really care how they're getting it or how the sausage is made, if you will. They want their game. They want to see it. They want it to be clean. They want it to be what they're used to. And however it gets to them, gets to them. I still teach an online class at the University of Houston. And, every semester I assign students to watch our Remy productions, A, because I want to know their feedback, but B, I want to see, the average person, can they tell a difference of, our Remy production versus a standard show that's on TV that may have 5 times the budget? And typically the answer is no, as long as they're often surprised at the quality that we can produce.
I think that's an awesome point, and something I should point out here before we go any further about your background, so that those who are watching can have a pretty good perspective here. Mike, you've spent a lot of time in this industry working for CBS, running a ton of production down at the University of Houston, and now at Vista in a true remote setting. How different is it from your experience working in a truck with the biggest, most widely watched CBS football and basketball broadcasts in the country versus the kind of work that you guys are doing multiple times a day regularly down in Fort Lauderdale?
Can I say that those bigger shows are easier? Is that
sure? Go ahead.
No, I think there is no comparison, right? The NFL is the NFL, and then there's kind of everything else. But when you are working an NFL game, you have unlimited resources. Like I said, it's one-to-one. Everybody has a specific role. There's more of everything. You never have to think of anything. You're prepping for NFL. You're doing one game a week. We can talk about announcers in a little bit, and you've lived it with us. For us, we have people that are doing double headers, triple headers. They might be doing 5-6 games in a week, production and talent. So juggling all of that and still sticking to the principles that you have on a NFL show and doing that on these shows, that's the challenge.
I find it so fascinating that you can call a 7:00 Eastern time game between Charlotte and Pittsburgh, call a game, it's over in 2 hours and 15 minutes. and walk down the hall 30 feet and do a game at 7 o'clock Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern time between Seattle and Portland. And the people at home would never know the difference. How difficult is it? I realize you're on the production side, but I'm asking from an announcer's perspective, how difficult is it to stay sharp, knowing that the people watching the second or third game of the day that you did, they don't care how many games that you've done, and they expect a high level production and a high level broadcast, when they're watching their teams play.
Yeah, for sure. And even to that point, they don't care that the game's kicking off at 11 p.m. Eastern and it's only 8 o'clock their time, right? They don't care. They just want the quality. So it's a juggling act, whether, it's time management and it's preparation, and whether it's people are drinking Monster Energy drinks or we're passing out coffee or whatever it is. It's a combination of all of the above to try to stay as sharp as you can and juggle it. I will say the benefit of that is maybe when you do it regularly, your individual prep becomes smaller, because if you're seeing more teams and you're doing more games, you've already, if you just call the Phoenix game on Wednesday and you're doing them again on Saturday, well, that takes away that prep. And so you get into a rhythm that way. And I think that helps as well.
I would encourage those who are watching. I know we've got quite a few here that have joined us live. Please send in your questions. We've got a lot of things we'd like to talk about, but we want this to be an interactive discussion, and would certainly like to answer some things you have along the way as well. It's easy for us, I think, in the United States to wrap our head around the idea of doing a game when you're based in a central location in Fort Lauderdale, and you can do a game anywhere around the country. The technology and the resources that are pretty readily available in America. That seems like something that's a little easier to wrap your head around. But you guys do just as much. I don't know if it's more. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but you do just as much international game as you do domestic. And I have to imagine that there are a whole slew of different challenges related to the productions and even just from a communication perspective, trying to line up the proper things you need. If you're doing a game in Curacao, or Barbados, how crazy is it for you guys to organize that level of production?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a challenge. CONCACAF is one of our clients, so we do a lot of soccer matches, and we call them integrations. So the feeds are produced on site or not at VISTA, and at VISTA we receive the clean feed. So the clean feed without graphics, typically without announcers as well. So at VISTA we take that feed, we add graphics, we add replay highlights, and then we add announcers. So you're right. It could be, hey, there's a rundown, and at this time we're expecting an opening animation, and they're going to a wide shot, or they're going to players walking out of the tunnel. So you just learn to adjust, and that's part of live production, right? Is having fun with it and adjusting on the fly. So
for those who maybe don't know or understand the difference, can you break down exactly what you mean by a REMI, a true remote production, versus an integration?
In our world, we call it REMI. On other networks, they may call it at-home productions, centralized productions. It's essentially all the same thing. So for us, a REMI is we are cutting the show at VISTA. So if you have multiple cameras on site, those cameras come back to VISTA as isolated feeds. They get routed into one of our control rooms where we have producer, director, graphics, replay, talent, and then it's produced as a traditional show. We're cutting the cameras, we're calling the replays, we're putting in the graphics, we're controlling the breaks. We do everything behind the scenes. An integration is when what I just described is being done somewhere else, and we get their cut feed with replays, and we add different branding and typically different announcers. So we've referenced USL a couple of times. We use this model almost every week with USL, where teams have local TV deals. So you can have two teams playing. All USL championship games air on ESPN Plus. So the home team is in charge of the production. That production will go to ESPN Plus. And then if the away team has a local TV deal, we will take that home team's cut feed, put it into a different control room at Vista, add the away teams, branding, graphics, sponsorships, different announcers, and then that feed only airs on their local TV in that market.
It's complicated, but it makes a ton of sense, and it works. And from a fan's perspective, you'd be watching literally the same feed if Louisville and Pittsburgh are playing each other. It's the exact same show, but with different branding and different graphics. And I think that's kind of unique. But certainly from your perspective, it makes for a unique challenge. Let's get to a couple of our listener questions. David pops in. He says, "Greetings from Hollywood, Florida." That's practically in your backyard. What are the biggest pros and cons of broadcasting remotely compared to being on site?
I think we've kind of discussed both of them. I think the pros are the experience. We have announcers, even yourself, Brendan. You can call 2-3 games in a day. You can call 4, 5, 6 games in a weekend. It's all about, for the younger folks out there, getting the reps and getting the experience. So that's certainly a plus. I think the negative is not being there. You're only seeing what the cameras are sending you. So you may miss something here and there. You're not able to, although our announcers have developed great relationships with coaches and team personnel, you're not able to go down on the field and talk to them face to face, before the game.
And how vital is that prep process of, making sure something that you might take for granted, as simple as like asking a communications, personnel member for a team about a pronunciation before the game, that stuff has to be done way ahead of time, or lining up conference calls with coaches. You can't go attend a practice. You have video available to you if you subscribe to ESPN Plus, but some of the unique challenges about making sure you're prepared to call a game offsite.
Yeah, that's everything. We try to set everything up as traditional as possible. So, using I think you said Louisville, Pittsburgh. So if you're calling a Louisville, Pittsburgh game on a Saturday, we're going to reach out to that PR staff early in the week. We're going to set up calls with both teams so the talent can talk to coach and talk to players and get a feel for what's going on around the team. Obviously, the more you do it, and we try to keep the same announcers on the same team, so you develop those relationships, and then eventually it becomes second nature. And we have plenty of announcers that reach out to coaches or teams directly and get all the information they need. And as we advance and PR staffs change the way they do things now, with some of the better PR staffs, they record videos of the players actually saying their names. So it's not just, a pronunciation guide. Now you can actually hear the player pronouncing his name. That goes a long way as well.
I want you to walk back down memory lane and think back to, a few years ago. You mentioned you're in year 5 at Vista, where things were when you got there compared to where they are now. Give us an idea of whether it's technologically or just general communication practices. How far have things come in just a 5-year stretch for a company that's been around for 3 decades?
So my final interview was the day before Thanksgiving, and I started March the following year. When I interviewed in November, control rooms did not have walls. The roofs were not there. The furniture was not in. So that gives you an idea of right off the bat, kind of we were off to the races. And in year 1, it was mainly USL. We added NWSL quickly after, but it was mainly USL, and those games were airing on YouTube. They had, I want to say they had 2 games a year that aired on ESPNU. And now every game is on ESPN Plus, and I believe this year we will have done 10 games on ESPN2 and another 8 to 10 games on ESPN Deportes. So just with USL alone, you can see the growth there.
And when you say every game, give people an idea of the volume of the kind of work that you're putting out over the course of the season.
Yeah, so the USL schedule is, I think, 400 or 500 games. There's 30 plus teams in the league. They play 17 home games. So someone smarter than me can do that math. But yeah, it's a lot of games, and I think it's typically a 34 game season over a 32 week stretch.
I feel like life changed so much during the pandemic for all of us as a business, as a human family, as a country. Um, we've been through an awful lot these last couple years, and the whole idea of producing games remotely has become a lot more commonplace because we've been forced to figure out the technology to make this all work. But the reality is, this was a business that was, kind of moving this direction before COVID even hit. And I think COVID maybe just sort of ramped up the need for this to get rolling, immediately. I don't think anybody's under the impression that this is going away, but can you take us back to when the pandemic started? It just feels to me like there's a lot of businesses that struggled because the pandemic took away their lifeline, and literally this business thrived during the pandemic because it provided a service that was needed.
Yeah, I don't, we certainly struggled in the beginning too, just like everybody else. Without the games, there wasn't a whole lot. But we did do, and you saw it with other networks and other companies as well. Again, using different technology and different people at home, whether it's calling old games and bringing in people who were involved in those old games to comment on them. We had an MMA type client where we aired, I think it was 3 old fights, and we had the fighters on talking to each other, watching the old fight. So you found new ways and new avenues to do things, all while hoping, the games and everything would return to as close to normal as possible.
So what's the future look like? I mean, what's next? When you look in a control room and you think, gee, we really need this technology to be able to pull off that, what are the next steps for this ramping up?
I think a lot of the future is here. I wouldn't be surprised if your Olympic sports and your lower tier sports that announcers continue to call games from home. And we certainly saw it with not just sports, but all types of productions. I remember seeing on social media and different things with directors setting up shop at their house and directing award shows or news shows or wherever it may be. So as the technology continues to advance, I think more and more people are going to be able to do things outside of a truck, outside of a central facility. And as long as the communication technology is there, that's certainly where it's headed.
Back to a listener question here. I always dream of calling games like USL and WSL. How do you find announcers and letting them know about calling games from Vista?
I think my email is still at the bottom here, right? That would be the best way to go about it. I think, you can email me, you can reach out to Brendan and try to get in touch with me, and we can take it from there.
We've got one here from Brian Kozowski. I'm new to the business. What type of career path should I take to eventually make it as a producer or director?
I think it's a lot of hard work. It's probably being a pre-med student at a Big Ten school like Michigan. But I think it's never saying no. So if you want to get into this business, whether it's an internship or someone offers you something, don't worry about the money right away. Just say yes, get the experience, and try to build on it from there.
I think I know you say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but I think that's a really good point because there are so many things in our industry that having the right education can help you for sure. But some advice that I was given early on in my career that I've sort of carried with me was study what you want to study and do what you want to do. Al Michaels has a history background. Look at what Jay Billis does professionally. And there are guys that are lawyers. I mean, the TV voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers has a legal background. You don't necessarily have to go through a journalism school to work professionally in this industry. It certainly can help. But perhaps you can speak, Mike, to the idea of meeting the right people and building the right relationships and how that can kind of help kickstart your career, regardless of where you went to school or what you studied.
Yeah, I think in any industry, in any walk of life, it's all about relationships and who you meet and who you know and how you take advantage of those. I will say this industry seems to be more connected than most. I don't think a lot of people know that pretty much at the network level, production people are production people for their specific networks. But the technical people, whether it's camera operators, graphics operators, replay operators, they work for all the networks. So I remember, when I was part of the Thursday Night Football crew for NFL Network, our lead replay operator, she would work NFL Network Thursday, ESPN, ABC, college football Saturday, and NBC Sunday Night Football Sunday. So if you get in with her, hey, you're working at ABC, who do you know over there? This, that, like, it's just someone talking to someone, and next thing you know, you're working for them. So this industry is super connected. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone either works for everyone or has worked for everyone or knows someone over here. And it is very important.
And I think the big key here is not just, networking. John Chalesnik, who runs STAA, likes to say this, that, networking has this connotation of, what can you do for me? How many people can I meet that can help me? And that the better way to go about it is more relationship building of what can I do for you and how can I help you? And I would expand upon that in my own words in that, there is a depth level that you need to reach when you are trying to meet people, because, Mike, if I go to you and ask you to introduce me to someone or to recommend me for a job to someone, I'm asking you to put your reputation on the line for me. And you have to know me well enough and be comfortable enough that you're willing to do that. If I've only met you a couple times and I ask you for that, even if you're a nice guy and you're willing to make a connection, you're not willing to stake your own reputation on me. So I think, there's an element of you need to spend time investing in developing those relationships well before you might ever need something from somebody.
I would agree. And I would say it happens on the flip side too, right? Someone may ask me, hey, Brendan reached out to me. He said, you guys know each other. What do you know about him? What can you tell me about him? And it could be, he's great. I've known him for 3 years. Or it could be, I hired him once 5 years ago. He doesn't really talk to me, or whatever the case may be. Right. So exactly right. Developing those relationships, you never know when it may come in handy.
Got another question here from Mike. I may have missed this, but for remotes, how much responsibility typically falls on the broadcaster for purchasing or owning the equipment or technology?
So from our perspective, we own all of the technology and equipment. It's all set up. The announcers come in and everything is set up there. In a COVID world, some announcers may bring in their own headsets because they feel more comfortable with that. We obviously go through our sanitizing and cleaning practices for everything. So for us, they don't have to worry about anything. They just have to prep for the game and come in and put the headset on and be ready to roll.
Maybe that's something we overlooked a little bit when talking about this. For literally these at-home kits that some of the networks are sending out, it's the same concept, but it's a different setup because you're literally sitting in your living room calling a game as opposed to going to a centralized facility. The equipment, I would imagine, in that situation is probably similar to what someone would see if you're an announcer sitting in one of your announce booths. Is that a fair thought?
For sure. It's cough box set up. It's a headset. It's very, very similar, whether it's network to network. Again, the technology is the technology, and most of it is the same.
How about from a talent perspective, when you're going through and trying to figure out, not just how to crew these games, but you're looking for good announcers who sound prepared, who clearly have done their homework, and whether you have a background, playing or coaching the sport, for an analyst certainly means a little bit more than a play-by-play. But what are some of the things that you're looking for when you're trying to figure out talent?
Well, I think first starting out, especially if you're fresh out of college, I can't tell you how many times people reach out to me or people reach out to other announcers and say, I want to get into this business. I want to do it. Okay, show me your reel. Oh, I don't have one of those. Or what is that? Or, that's where everything starts and stops. I don't care if you sit at home and record a game, you calling it on TV at home, or, even if you're calling a fake game, give me something that I can judge you off of, and what you sound like and how you may call a game. So that's the first step. And I think from there, it's taking the chances. It's taking the risks. We all know in this industry, unless you're the top, 1% or 2%, you're not going to get super wealthy, especially right off the bat. So you have to be willing to put in the work and put in the time. And when someone offers you something, it may only be a couple $100, or it may be for free, or whatever the case may be, take it, because like we've discussed earlier with relationships, you may take a game at a school and the person running production at that school knows someone at a network and says, hey, this person did this game for free for me. They did a really good job. I think you should take a look at them. And then it just goes from there. So that's how, again, just accept everything and try not to turn it down and try not to worry about money right away.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of a reel. I think there's a lot of folks, especially who are in college or just out of college, who might be looking for some guidance on literally exactly how to structure a reel. How much do you care about highlights? Do you care about them at all? Do you want to see something that's a 20-minute stretch of play-by-play, or are you looking for a 5-minute sample of what you can call? Give us an idea of a structure of a reel that you'd like to see.
It's tough, right? Because everybody has their own opinions. Everybody wants to see different things. I think as a whole, we know in the age that we live in, people don't have the time. People don't have the what's the word I'm looking for? They 30 seconds and they're out, right?
The attention
Their
span
attention span is brief. So you want to put your best thing at the top. If it's a highlight, if it's an interview, if it's a goal call, if it's a stand-up, whatever it is, put that at the top. Grab my attention and hope that you can get me for another 30 seconds or another minute. If you have something boring at the top, and you lose that person's interest in the first 10 or 15 seconds, and all your good stuff is 5 minutes after that, well, it doesn't do you any good. So it doesn't, in my opinion, I want to see just a couple minutes of your best stuff, and then if you get through that and I like it, then I may say to you, hey, can you send me a half, or can you send me a game, or can we expand on this? But generally speaking, I just want to see your best stuff.
And how about the idea of multiple sports? I mean, I realize that the majority of the work that's produced right now out of Vista is soccer, and it may not always be that way. But you've obviously been around lots of different games and different sports. When you're looking at a reel, do you only want to see a sport-specific reel, or if someone is applying to get a soccer play-by-play job, but maybe the best they've got is football play-by-play or basketball play-by-play, should they feel comfortable sending that to you? For me specifically, I'm okay with different sports and bouncing it around. It doesn't have to be sport specific. Again, before I took this job, I was by no means a soccer guy. I think, if you either have it or you don't. So if you understand the ins and outs of the business and how to call games and how to get in and out of breaks and how to lead your analysts and the things that you need to do, no matter what the sport is, it'll work across any sport. Now, once you get in, then you need to learn the different nuances of each sport. Soccer is a little more free flowing and there's no stopping, and it's okay to lay out, and the different things involved with soccer. But again, once either you have it or you don't. So again, give me your best stuff. It may come to, hey, this is all basketball. Have you ever done soccer? Do you know soccer? Can you send me a soccer game? That kind of thing. But I just want to see overall, your talent. For those that might be watching that are not on-air people, but production people, I know we've talked a bit today, and certainly we've talked an awful lot as a group at STAA about best practices for advancing your on-air career. But for folks that might be interested on the production side, I know you basically said, hey, look, just take every opportunity that comes their way. Is it a trade school thing? Is it a find a mentor who, hey, I really want to run replays, so find somebody that knows how to work a replay operator, or gee, I want to be a cameraman or a camera woman. Well, find somebody that can operate it. I mean, what's the best way that, you would go about suggesting that?
Well, I think, luckily now almost every school has some type of video production, whether it's the video boards or an ESPN Plus or a streaming service or whatever it may be. Almost every school is required to do some type of production now. So I would start there. Every school has a director of video or an executive producer or something that oversees the video department. So that's where I would start. And then again, depending on the city, depending on the level of productions, those people know people. So a lot of school productions are half students, half freelancers. You start to do some stuff. You introduce yourself to a freelancer. Hey, I'm working, the Astros game tomorrow night. We need someone. Maybe you can come help me out, or I'm a camera operator and you can be my utility, and maybe you can run the camera a little bit later or before the game or whatever it may be. Always ask questions. The worst someone can say is no. So, reach out to people, email them, and go from there.
And how important is it for on the production side for folks to learn different roles? I mean, are you looking for someone that is I only direct, I'm a director, I've always been a director, I always will be a director? Or are you looking for someone who's got some versatility that says, sure, you want me to hop on replay or graphics or, producing a game? No problem.
Yeah, the versatility for sure. Especially in our workflow and our setup, we have our staff, almost everybody can do everything. So we definitely have people who are specific to their roles and maybe better served in certain roles, but with our schedule and everything involved, you may be asked to do something else. You may be asked to do a position you don't want to do, but you need to know it and you need to be able to pull it off. So the versatility is certainly key.
Well, I certainly appreciate your time this afternoon, Mike. I think this has been super valuable. And, I'm really interested to see how this part of our industry continues to evolve, because I think it's here to stay. It's going to become more and more commonplace. And Vista is a company in particular that's been right at the forefront of this well before the pandemic hit and before things needed to ramp up in a remote, style. So on behalf of all of our clients, thanks for spending some time with us. We've had Mike's email down at the bottom, kind of scrolling through, but if for some reason you didn't catch it, you can contact him at mfreedman@vistaworldlink.com. Mike's always willing to listen to you and have a conversation with you if you need it. Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks again, and we'll look forward to catching up soon.
You got it. Thanks. I really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for watching and sending in the questions.